No, this isn't right at all. You're not supposed to be here yet. This is all a spoiler. Quick, Stanley, close your eyes.
The Stanley Parable. Where to begin? The Stanley Parable is such a complex game that it's hard to describe in words without ruining the experience for you. So I'm gonna try my best not to do that. Made by Galactic Cafe, the Stanley Parable was originally a Half-Life 2 mod that was released on July 27th of 2011. The game was described by the creator as being an experimental, narrative-driven first-person game. It is an exploration of choice, freedom, storytelling, and reality, all examined through the lens of what it means to play a video game. That description is actually one of the most accurate I could potentially think of. Topics covered in the Stanley Parable are never straightforward or linear. All of the endings to this game are symbolic in some shape, form, or way. And that's what makes the Stanley Parable so great. The thought and effort put into this game is outstanding, with 18 completely different endings, each with its own narration and humor to add to it. Speaking of the narration, let us talk about the narrator. The voice that enchants you in the trailer to the in-game voice wanting you to cooperate with him as he tells his story belongs to a man known simply as Kevin Briding. It's also important to note that he reprises his role from the original Half-Life 2 mod, which is great because his voice is fantastic.
Look, Stanley, I think perhaps we've gotten off on the wrong foot here. I'm not your enemy, really I'm not. I realize that investing your trust in someone else can be difficult, but the fact is... What? Really? I was in the middle of something. Do you have zero consideration for others? Are you that convinced that I want something bad to happen to you?
The narrator does exactly what it seems like he would do. He narrates the events of the Stanley Parable, and while it seems like a really small thing, when the game is centered around the narrator rather than the player, it leads for some very interesting dialogue.
Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Shocked, unraveled, Stanley wondered in disbelief who orchestrated this. What dark secret was being held from him? What he could not have known was that Stanley was in such a rush to get through the story as quickly as possible, he didn't even have a single minute to just let the narrator talk. That kind of anxiety isn't healthy, so he relaxed for a few moments with some calming New Age music. Feeling soothed and rejuvenated, Stanley calmly walked forward into the opened passageway.
I've never quite found the words to describe the events of the Stanley Parable, and this is one of those games where the less you know about it, the better. This game is much more of an experience than a game, as it's not something you would play for the gameplay, but for the joy of playing through it. In terms of the gameplay, there's not a lot to it. The game consists of you walking and occasionally pushing a few buttons. That's about it. The pinnacle of the game's enjoyment comes from disobeying the narrator and listening to the narrator react.
A 1? I mean, I can understand if you had reservations, you saw ways the game could be improved to more fully express itself mechanically and artistically, but a 1? That's not even helpful. What am I supposed to do with that? But I guess it isn't my place to judge.
If you're considering purchasing this game, do yourself a favor and do not watch any Let's Plays or spoiler-worthy content about it. It's a much greater experience for yourself the less you know about it. Would this technically be considered spoiler-worthy content? No, it's not. Shh. In fact, in the description for the Half-Life 2 mod on ModDB, they actually recommend that you do not know anything about the game before going in. This is further supported by the fact that the demo itself is completely unrelated to the game and its story, though still manages to portray what the Stanley Parable has to offer. Some might even consider it an alternate ending altogether. The best experience you could possibly have with the Stanley Parable can only be achieved by playing through the game yourself. While some may say that the game has no replay value and isn't worth the $15 price tag, I would beg to differ. The game has a lot of fun to offer if you're a fan of game narration, much like that of the Portal franchise. However, there is some truth to this as the game does lack a bit of replay value once you play through all the endings. This game does a fantastic job at entertaining its player on their first playthrough, and that to me is the best you could ask for. Enjoyment upon the first playthrough. In total, I had a lot of fun playing through the Stanley Parable. It was a fun experience and it definitely kept me entertained for quite a few hours trying to find each individual ending. The voice acting is fantastic and the scripting is phenomenal for what the game wants to portray. The only thing that keeps the Stanley Parable from getting a perfect score from me is the fact that once you play through all the game in its entirety, there's not much for you in terms of replay value. However, if you know nothing about the game as it is, I would definitely recommend playing through it at a friend's house or even purchasing the game for yourself if you must. That being said, I give the Stanley Parable a 4 out of 5 for being a phenomenal first play.
Whoa, dude! You made it to the end of my video! Your reward? Another video! Big ol' thank you to the Yeousch Recruits channel for posting this part of my double feature. If you would like to see the other part, click the annotation on the screen. Somewhere. I'll see you all on my new channel.